some ungodly time in the morning and I'm headed to the UP. It's 10 degrees out right now. Following Eric, we're going to do a challenge in the UP. I would imagine when that snow hit, they got up and moved pretty quick. We just got to snow levels in the last week or so. So they might already be moved. I don't know. But the snow is supposed to be really deep from what I've heard. I don't know for sure. But I heard rumors of 3 feet of snow up there. Maybe more. So I'd have to imagine they're packed on certain trails. If they're in the yards, the deer yards, there should be high concentrations of deer numbers. With that much snow, they're not moving far though. If they're on the travel routes, that should be pretty interesting too, hunting beat trails where all the deer are forced on the same trail because of the snow.
So it is 5:15 in the morning, Tuesday the 27th, I believe it is. I'm just getting on the road. I'm going to meet Dan in Fond du Lac area, and we are headed up to the Upper Peninsula, Michigan for a hunt. We're going to do our best to try to hit what is called the deer migration in the UP. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that. I hope that we're hitting this with the right timing. They did get a large snowstorm recently, a winter storm, and that seems to be what kicks those deer into action to start migrating to what are called their winter complexes, where the deer where they winter.
I've been doing some like online scouting here on Onyx, just some e-scouting, just looking for things. And doing some research online. I guess there's a deer migration that happens up in the UP if they get a lot of snow and stuff. So if that's the case, doing my research on that, and then just trying to find things that have worked for me in the past on the map, just like similar terrain features and stuff like that. But I'm going to rely on probably like boots on the ground a little bit, just as well as like just getting an idea of like some locations that we want to go look at here while e-scouting.
The first thing we did when we got to Iron Mountain, Michigan, was we met up with Cliff Kissinger, the owner of Snipe Lake Bar and Grill. Cliff deals with a lot of hunters, and he does a lot of hunting up there himself and knows a lot about what's going on. And we wanted to ask him about the deer migration and about the deer complexes. So you were saying the deer migration's already over?
For the most part. They move
So it's pretty quick, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what, like 2-3 days as soon as they hit that snow?
Yeah,
And then...
basically you get like a 4 or 5 day window, and that's after we get a real good storm to start pushing. So, and we had that last week, or early last week. So by now, that migration's pretty much over.
Did you get to hunt here in that?
I did a little bit. I didn't have a lot of time, so I hunted some cedar areas, but I didn't actually hunt the migration trails just because I didn't have time in other schedule to go hunt them.
You've done that in the past? So.
Yep, and it's, if you can time it right, it's amazing. It's one of those crazy phenomenons. I mean, to see so many deer all go in one direction.
I've had people tell me that they've seen 70 deer on the trail.
Oh yeah, yep, that's, I mean.
In one day?
Yep, for sure, absolutely.
I'd imagine you get 3 feet of snow or something and they're all confined right to one trail.
Yeah, so they all take the exact same trail. They veer from it because it gets beat down so well. And I've heard from, I don't know if it was a forester or someone from the DNR, they were telling me that it's kind of like instilled in their brain from previous generations. So when you find those migration trails,
The same trail.
they're always there. It's one of those few things that doesn't change. Like a big thing up here, so many people hunt the same spots every year and complain they don't see it here. Well, this is like the one instance where it makes sense to hunt that same spot for the migration.
Right.
I mean, it might be a spot you'll never see a deer the rest of the season, but when that migration tips off.
I was looking at some of the like the biologist maps,
Yep,
and they actually show the trails. You see where all the trails come together in like funnels.
gotcha.
You have one little tight area where it's like, holy crap, if you could hit that right.
Yep, yeah, they're pretty open about the complexes. They show where they are. They just don't really show a lot of the trail data, even though I know there was a couple of years ago they had college tracking and do some studies.
I know I did reach out to the biologists in Dickinson County and one of these other counties,
Yep,
and none of them would respond.
yeah.
And they probably don't want to give you too many details.
I think they would have too many guys pile up on them, and, you know, they did share that, or they know where they are and they don't want to see them. So,
Right.
that could be it. But yeah,
And I think you mentioned to me the general public is kind of quiet about it. Too.
Yeah, yep.
You found out where you sat that year. I know you talked to an old timer that lived up here that you got to know pretty well, but you
Yep.
were pretty hush about it.
exactly, yep, it was an older guy, he was probably 70s, 80s, and we were sitting in a bar, not this one, but started talking about it, and told him I never seen such a thing, and then he went and showed me his spots, so, and I've been sitting there, you know, ever since, as long as the time allows. Some years we don't get enough snow until after the season closes. This year we had it, so now, if you get to those complex areas, I mean, the big key is cedar swamps or fresh water. So
Right.
it's not unusual to see deer literally just standing there watching guys running harvesters, waiting for tree tops. Some of the brave ones are in there eating it while the guys are running machines yet.
So would you recommend we started over by the logging kind of thing? And
Yeah, I would keep your eye out for anyone that's logging right now. Another benefit to that is they're plowing the forest roads to get to their jobs.
yeah, with the amount of snow, you kind of have that plow.
Yeah, after the snow we got last week, you're not getting trucks real far, and some of these, you know, parcels of commercial forest are a few miles off blacktop, so unless you're gonna snowmobile.
It looks to me, it's kind of, you know, like you were talking about getting a little remote. It looks like it'd be tough to get remote. I mean, not just the depth of the snow, but I mean, you're gonna be getting snowed on the back of your shirt and everything
Yeah.
else. So all the trees, the pines and stuff are just covered
Yep.
in snow. And I do think that the deer are gonna be piled up where the logging or the cedar is anyway. So if you can get a car or a truck near it, I think that might be the ticket.
Yep.
And use the truck to scout,
Yep,
and
exactly.
then on from there.
We got
It wouldn't
plenty
be a
of
bad idea.
snow, so it's easy to see their trails right now. That's one big perk. And once they get those trails in, they're sticking to them. It's a lot of work otherwise for them.
Right, and that's the thing too, is they're not gonna wander off those trails very far, so you can really kind of pinpoint exactly where they're gonna move, they
Yep.
just come by you.
Yep, it's not like the rest of the season where all of a sudden you picked the wrong trail and they went 45 yards.
Yeah,
you know,
you're
the
looking
wrong
at this
way.
trail and the deer shows up over here, you know,
Now they're consolidated. They got so many less travel corridors.
unless they're right on the food, and then you probably got a beat down area.
Yeah, and
When
when
you get
you're,
a path going to it, I think you can really narrow them down.
yeah, when you're right in the logging sites, a lot of times the loggers are done by like 3:30 it seems. So sometimes I'll set up all up until they're quitting, and you literally hunt. I mean, you can still smell the heat off of their machines getting deer started coming in already. So they're hungry. A lot of old timers up here, they'll tell you they used to just take chainsaws in the woods and they drop a tree and that was their bait. So I've never done it personally, but I see a lot of cedars that get dropped during gun season, so it's kind of a common occurrence in the area. But yeah, if you can't find logging, then yeah, the cedar swamp, especially after the wind we had last week. There's gonna be cedar branches that are down and they're gonna be devouring those.
Now, how hard is it to get a decent buck this time of year?
Well, a lot of them lose their horns already, so that's one thing that.
Yeah, we even got them dropping down where I'm at.
Yep, so that's one thing we're up against. We obviously have a very high doe number up here compared to bucks, because you weren't allowed to shoot does for so many years. So the bucks get real wore down after the rut, so a lot of them, you'll find dead heads up here, more common than at home, just because they get beat up, they die, they can't handle it, you know.
Yeah, they lose all their fat reserves and then go into the snow in winter, can't get it back.
Yep, but the majority of the big bucks I've seen up here that other people have are always their late season ones, just because they're on the food. So as long as you can get on a food source,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much easier to dial it down where they're going to be, you know, this time of year compared to a month or 2 months ago when there was food everywhere and easy to travel, so.
How's the size of the bucks up here in comparison to like down by me?
Bigger bodies, and you're gonna notice something weird up here too, you're gonna see tons of does that look like horses, because a lot of them are 10, 12 years old, so, you don't wanna put one of them in the freezer, they're pretty tough, but yeah, so body-wise, definitely bigger, racks, so I mean, you're not gonna see giant bucks like you get down in farm country there.
Yeah, but you could see like, 110, 130.
Oh, yeah, yep, for sure. So I'm gonna show you some pictures of ones that customers have sent pictures of this year too, if you wanna see some of what's in the area, so.
I guess one thing to note too, while we're on that subject, is a lot of the bucks up here have missing brow tines.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has to do with soil or what it is.
We saw that in northern lower too.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a common trait that they're missing browse, so you'll have really nice deer that are only 6-pointers. I know last year I had a fork running around up the road at my place, and the tines on it were probably 10, 12 inches and it only fork. Kind of looked unusual. I wanted to poke it just with a DVT, but yeah, let him go. Haven't seen him again, but yeah, they're definitely out there. Just gotta hope the horns are still on them. And I know I had one nice 10-pointer. A friend of mine was watching pretty close, and last week he had a picture it had nothing left. So, so they are starting to drop that cold weather. It has something to do with that. Last week it was frigid. It didn't get above 0, I think, for like 5 years. So now it's gonna be warmed up, and they tend to move a lot more too when it's warm and calm like this late season in the area. So yeah, get on the food. That's kind of the ticket right now.
On this challenge, we invited the Barber family and Kevin Paul, and they hunted in 2-man teams. They have a YouTube channel called Grounded Hunting that is very impressive. And me and Eric really like what these guys are doing and have been impressed with their hunts and content. Check them out and give their channel a sub. We put a link in the video description.
We already got them dead.
Deer wintering complex. They do their migration, and it tells you like.
They're in one of these 150,000 acres.
Yeah, but it says like this like land over here, the deer wintering complex is like made up of like 43% Ottawa National Forest, 19% like corporate national owners, Michigan State Forests. But like these other ones, so the green's like for Iron County.
I say we go center green.
Green is for like Iron County. But there's also like these other ones, these gray ones, like other DWCs. So like we could also check out those. Like these are big too. But I just focused on like the green one. But this is Iron County right here, which we probably should just stay in Iron County.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I just starting.
We'll kill a booner here real
Starting
quick.
that centerpiece where the road runs right through the middle.
Right here. Or do you want to go to the one with the cedars? They say, look,
Either one.
this is where is it?
We'll get to them both. We just gotta start driving.
Yeah, we got to get on the miles.
Let's go for the one with the cedar stuff.
I'm looking for it. I'm not a fast reader.
What are you looking?
I'll show you. It tells you like food.
Oh, it tells you on here about the cedars?
Yeah.
Look at that. Cedar right there.
Yeah, but if I just read through this thing slow, then I'll find it. But
Right there, cedar. Best
Primary-
functional shelter is the intercept.
primary
larger
shelter
ones.
species, cedars and hemlock trees provide best functional shelter.
Told you.
I know. You know it by experience. I had to look it up.
Let's go. Let's roll.
Wait. It's going in the garage. This is like old forge up by me. Look at all the deer tracks.
Yeah.
Probably just coming down.
That's public back in there.
Right here?
Not right
Yeah.
here, but back in there a little ways.
Yeah, we're close. I mean, I think this is just like a lake. It reminds me of a lake up by me. You come across the national forest and cross the street down in the people's yards and eat a lot of does. I mean, you'll find some bucks.
Dan Infalt invited us up to do a little hunting up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in the UP. And so the boys did some e-scouting, and that's not necessarily my forte. I'm kind of a read and react guy. So we've seen quite a few deer in here. We wanted to come from the top, and another guy pulled up behind us, and we were there first, but he clearly didn't ask or care. And so we just bowed out and came down here. There's a cedar thicket that we think will offer a lot of good cover in another spot. But we didn't have enough time. By the time we got up here today, we just kind of come out and we grabbed the hotels. Were pretty booked up, so we grabbed the hotel and we had to come to a spot that was fairly close to the hotel because we're running out of daylight. So we ended up here, and I tell you, there's a lot of tracks and we've seen quite a few deer, so I'm not disappointed at all. We just got to find a buck and see if we can get an arrow in him. And that's my style anyhow. Like I say, I'm pretty good at reading the terrain and going in and finding where the deer are. I'm assuming they're browsing on this slashing.
It's our first evening in here. We just walked back an access trail, just crossed over into public, so we're kind of just scouting, but anything can happen. Seen a lot of deer tracks, so if we cut, we're gonna ease our way up into public a little bit, just get well on public so we can shoot 360. And if we cross a good intersection or we see something we like, we're gonna just hang out for the night and observe. And you never know what can happen.
So the tracks have dried up. We got up here on public, and it did flatten out. So in all fairness, most of the tracks were down on the side of the hill. But this was the first track, and it's a decent track. And it looks like the deer meandered in here for quite a while, so probably a buck. But there were deer tracks all over the place down on the private, and man, it's almost like they flipped a switch when we got up here on the public, which is either they really like the side of that hill, which is probably true, but also there could have been a heavy amount of pressure in here, you know, over the course of the whole fall. And I don't know, I think these deer are migrating too, so that may not make sense. But it's definitely a different world up in here. So we're just going to continue to go up this trail and more or less scout. And if we see something, just kind of react to it. So we're going to continue on.
So here's where we saw the deer cross the road. Right here. It goes up into them pines. And a lot of those other trails seem to go up into those pines too. So there might be a concentration of deer up into here, behind this thick stuff. From over there, Eric pointed out some like thicker brush, like grass up on top, so maybe they're coming out of that. But there's a lot of sign coming out of there.
Yeah, it looks to be like there's a good number of deer, you know, on this side. Potentially this side, but I don't see the pine cover on this side of the road.
So we can find a place to get off the road. I think we should just kind of walk this in here and see if all this comes together. Because there's some good trails coming across right here. And that brushy stuff is right up there. That's where I think they're coming in and out of.
That's what I think too. I really like the pine canopy with the thick brush around it.
Yeah, look at that trail behind you.
Yep.
That's a heavy trail.
I think this has to be the side that's holding them. You take a look out here, there's no pine cover.
Okay, let's just see if we can get the truck off the road up here a little bit and then just walk back in there.
How do you think you might want to approach this, Dan? We're suspecting bedding is
Well,
200 yards away.
I think we got to get up in there, and if all the trails come together, find a spot to set up. Feels like the wind's okay. It's just a matter of if they're watching us. If they're in it a little ways, I think we're okay. But if they're sitting on that edge watching us, we're screwed.
Right.
We got to watch for deer to jump and stuff. But
It's a tough hunt this time of year.
yeah,
I am in over my knee in a snowbank right now. This is the first step off the road that we took.
yeah, I just sunk surprisingly deep.
This is a battle.
So it's over my knees. My boots are already filling up with snow.
Hopefully we have a dryer at the hotel.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even have a tree to grab. Oh, no wonder there's no deer coming through here. Once we walk through here, this is going to become a deer trail.
These actually look like they're coming out. Huh?
What's that?
These actually look like they're coming out.
Yeah.
Because that trail over there that I walked to the hilltop, that was actually coming out as well.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is there's private where that thick is, and a whole bunch of traffic is coming out of that real thick up there and going into the private over there, and we think maybe it's coming up through here onto the public. So we're going to walk around and see if all those trails come together up on this ridge, because if they do, it could be a pretty good spot.
I think that could make sense too, because if we have an exit here and an exit up there.
And these just seem like they're cutting the corner. Those are coming right out of the bedding, you know, over there. And we saw a deer crossing, what, an hour ago? And I picked the best thing I found, actually. Eric's in the better spot down the hill here, where a lot more trails come out. But there was that and this, and this has one trail coming out with one good set of tracks and some obvious smaller tracks. It might be a really big doe and some smaller does, or it could be a buck and some does. I don't know. But it came out and went back in on the same trail. So, well, actually, they came in here, they came out, and then they swung down and cut the corner coming out. But I think this is the way to come in, because there's thick down there, and there's obviously bedding over there. So Eric's hunting where the bedding drops down over there and comes over, and I'm hunting where the bedding drops down over here and comes over. But I just got one trail at 25 yards. That's about it. So the snow's only been on the ground since Sunday night, and it's Tuesday night, so really they only came through here once. One time in, one time out. So it really doesn't show a lot. But there were a lot of deer coming into this thicket going across the road there from the bedding. So I think maybe some of them are crossing up further and going back that way. But it gets onto private land over there. So with running out of time today, I'm just going to sit here and hope for the best. The trail is right there. Comes out of that bottom and comes across the road, and the bedding's over there. But the road's very seldom used. So Eric is on the other end of that bedding, way down in the valley, that way. So I think he's in a better spot, because his deer are going through up here, and there's a lot more trails. I'm just on one trail right here. But we'll see what happens. It's just a starting point. Cold one today. The snow's real deep too, so navigating through this stuff makes you sweat, and you get even colder. It's supposed to warm up through the week though. Today's supposed to be the coldest day. It was I think 16 when I left the truck to come hunt. That was the highest we saw today, is when we came out to hunt. So 16 is actually a lot better than what I'm coming from back home. So I got the wind is blowing that way, and the deer are coming from that way. I think it's a pretty good off wind. I don't think there's any way of them winding me. I don't like the fact that they're kind of coming at me, but there really isn't another way to set up. So I just gotta wait till I get a broadside shot, and hopefully they don't pick me off in this tree. Just have to be real still, but I'll be able to see them from a long ways if they actually come the way I expect them. They're gonna stick to trails because the snow is too deep to make a new one. So to conserve energy, they'll walk the same trails. The snow's over 2 feet deep for sure, and there's drifts over 3, so they'll stick to those trails. Matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet if you come back in here in about 4 days, the trails me and Eric made coming through here where we pounded trails through scouting will be the deer trails. It's all about survival now. Gosh, that's only 5 or 6 yards. He really didn't spook that bad. He just ran a little bit and stopped, and he's been walking around ever since. Matter of fact, right now he's about 150 yards over there. I can see him through the trees. He did stop and stare off into the distance on the ridge line over there. And I started looking over there, and I saw at least 4 deer go through. I think there might have even been more heading down that ridge. And, oh, he just bedded down. Weird. Oh, now he got up and he's moving again. Strange. But, those, deer on that ridge were going down the trails that Eric's on. But we both thought that the deer would be coming from that way, this way. And it looks like they were going that way.
Dan and I split off about 400 yards from here, back at the road. And we were in here just a little bit earlier today, and we kind of have some spots picked. Although not overly confident with them, but you never know. Something might just work out. The road is back this way. And Dan had, when we first drove into this property, we were kind of looking left and right and just kind of making out what we could with deer trails. And we noticed off to this side that I'm on, we had a lot of thick cover with pine canopy. And we started noticing trails running back and forth across the road. And we noticed a thicket up on top of a hill over this way with these pines in it, and it's mixed in with all kinds of brush like this. And as we were driving down the road, Dan noticed a deer cross into the property across the road. And there's a big draw that actually runs through here, and it runs straight behind me. And at the very start of that draw, Dan jumped up on top of the ridge, just above that draw, because we had noticed some trails kind of crossing the road out of what we believe is bedding here, and crossing the road and running a ridge into where we believe they could be feeding. So Dan is set up on that ridge, I believe. I don't know if he ran into anything else at all, but I guess I'll hear more from him after we meet at the truck. I dropped onto a trail that I noticed off of the road and just kind of followed it down in here. And this draw kind of drew my attention. So I just kept following that deer trail out to what would be a logging road here. And I have a nice little intersection of deer trails. And it looks like further down the ridge, it looks like it's definitely thick enough to hold some bedding. And these trails kind of confirm, their direction of travel. So with that being suspected bedding, I'm really hoping to see something come right over the top of this little rise in elevation here and drop through these pines. If they do that, I have a nice little trail straight in front of me at probably 15 yards. Sitting across the road said he just saw a spike and a number of other deer. And so I've been keeping an eye out. He said they're headed my way. And sure enough, I just saw about 3 or 4 trotting through here. But they were further out. I'm not sure if I caught that on video or not. not sure what spooked them. Here we go. I just saw another one pop out. If they come in here, my wind is not blowing in the best direction.
Alright, we are in Michigan. Drove up from Wisconsin this morning and got up here just in time to slip in the woods. So Dawson and I are gonna slip in to this one spot. We've never been up here before, but we're just driving some of these old back roads, and we cut a bunch of tracks going from the woods down into like the backyards and stuff. But what we're thinking is that there's deer coming down to those backyards at night, and they got to be coming. I would guess that they're bedding not too far back in here with this deep snow. So there's a bunch of tracks, bunch of fresh tracks coming out of here. Dawson and I are gonna slip up this way. Those guys are gonna go check out a different spot. But bunch of tracks, no human tracks, so I don't think anybody's been in here messing with them. So we're gonna slide back in here, follow some of these tracks back, and then if we cut a good trail or something, like I said, we don't have any experience in this area, but if we cut a good trail, we'll just set up on it tonight and go off of that. But we got everything we need to get in a tree or to just stay on the ground. So we're gonna probably work back in here until we either start jumping deer or cut a good trail that we want to sit on tonight. So bunch of deer tracks around in here though. Follow that back in. That's public that way, so bunch of trails coming out right there. As we were scouting earlier, we were looking at the Michigan deer migration map, and on it kind of tells you like where what kind of trees are around, and it said there's a lot of cedars and stuff like that up in here, so that's pretty much why we picked this area. But I mean, there's deer tracks everywhere. Got some beds right here. We're only 150 yards off the road, maybe not even that. So I think we're gonna work our way back in, either to where we jump some deer or to where we get some eyes on some super fresh tracks. So that one right there. Yeah. It's a pretty decent track. Seems like a lot of them are going that way. As we're getting back in here, getting pretty easy to see that we got fantastic chances at shooting a buck as big as the wrong bull buck. I mean, odds are definitely in our favor, so that's good news. But we walked way up in this thicket. We were on like a transition between thick pines and then this old clear cut that has now grown up. Then we kind of cut back, and edge of the pines, and there's a lot of trails just going in and out of both. So we also got a hill up to our right, and there's quite a few trails coming off that hillside. So I don't know if they're bedding up on that ridge or what, but it should be interesting. We got probably 2 hours here tonight. If we see something move through, we might give it another go tomorrow. But if nothing, we might just jump to a new spot tomorrow. But we'll see how it goes here tonight. The hope is just to get something moving in between either these pines, this clear cut, going towards the road where we saw most of the sign. That's down there. I don't know what their deer are feeding on down there, but I mean, we saw probably 4 or 5 does down there just driving in here in backyards. Yeah, like right in somebody's backyard feeding, and then just heavy trails coming out of the public. So no boot tracks, so I don't think the deer get pressured. I think that they're just hanging out close to where they're feeding, which in this case is somebody's bird feeder. But we'll sit here tonight, see what happens. We got obviously the snow, so pretty easy to pick deer out if we catch something moving through here. yards or so. slip out of here for tonight. I like this area. It definitely seems like the deer are using it pretty good. I don't know why they're going this way. The direction of travel is like, even the deer that we saw, the tracks in here, they're all crossing this trail. Going, there must be some food over there somewhere that they're going to, would be my guess. And then they're bedding up here on this hillside somewhere. But that's gonna do it for tonight. We're gonna slip out of here. And I don't know what we're gonna do in the morning, but we're gonna go meet up with these guys and see what everybody else saw. And go from there. So.
Pretty sure we just went to dinner.
Did you see the burger I got?
It wasn't big enough.
It wasn't big enough. So you're in for a treat. I'm going to show you how to make a P&J sandwich.
PBJ 101
Nobody knows how to do this right.
by Dan Info.
The number one rule is as little bread as possible. Then you only have to eat one. So you get a little peanut butter.
Little
on
bread
there.
as possible. You should have one slice there.
So you get a little bit of bread on peanut butter on here. Show you how this works. Some peanut butter on here.
Dan, don't you think you should probably just invest in a spoon?
I think that maybe I should just grab a spoon. This is not getting enough peanut butter. I'm afraid if I get more, I'll break the knife.
Jeez.
This is how I always make peanut butter sandwiches. Peanut butter and jelly. So
This is Dan's favorite PBJ recipe.
yeah. So you get it on there about a
Couple-
half to 3/4 of an inch thick. See that?
Couple pounds peanut butter.
You get like
'Kay,
you
what
can
do we
get
got?
like 5 sandwiches out of a jar that big. So don't be greedy. You get a little more on there.
Actually, we almost got a bigger jar, didn't we? Peanut butter. You were actually concerned about that for a little while.
Yeah, it doesn't look like much to last us the week, but we can always go back. So you get some jelly on here. So. Yeah, that's pretty good. Quarter jar, so we can get 4 out of that jar. Alright, here we go. You're kind of trying to find some way to keep it on the bread. So, there's your jelly.
Jeez.
And you take your peanut butter and you seal that jelly in like that. There you go. There you go. That one's yours. Now make me one. Now, I gotta limit my sugar according to my doctor, so I can only have one P&J sandwich is what he said. So this is one.
Okay, okay.
All right.